Welcome to the first ever Married People webinar. We are so excited you're here. We're recording live here in the Married People International Headquarters or my home office. So one of those two things are going on. I have my puppy down at my feet. So if you hear growling or whatever dogs do, just let me know. But we're so excited that you guys are here. We know you're super busy, got a lot of good stuff going on. To tell you a little bit about why we're here is Married People is the marriage division of Orange. And you may not have a clue what Orange or Married People are, so we're super quick. Orange is an organization that is committed to impacting those that are impacting the next generation. And this is primarily through the local church. And so we really want to do that because we believe that what happens at home is important, maybe a little bit more than important what's happening at churches. And so where do we get the word orange? Is yellow represents the light of the church and red represents the love of the family. Together they make orange. And so from babies through marriage, we want to help churches help families. And so I oversee Married People, again, which is the marriage division of Orange. And our specific goal is to help you help the marriages, not only in your church, but in your community. And so that's why we're here today. And one of the things that we're really wanting to do better this year is we not only want to help you with resources, we want to help with training. We feel like we've not done a great job with that, and we want to get better at that. And so this is the heart of a lot of this webinar today, is to talk about training and how we can learn from each other in community. And that's why we're so excited about this Facebook page. I mean, it was when we did it, it was not like this big intentional thing of, hey, boy, this thing is going to go crazy on Facebook if we do a Married People's Leaders page. And you guys, as usual, tell us what's going to work and what doesn't. And so it's been so fun. I think we've just hit our 1,000th person in this community. And I really feel like I can call it a community because I feel like not only have I met a lot of you, but I've watched how you interact with each other. How you serve each other, how a question pops up and you quickly can answer each other. And I think in the marriage ministry space, that's really rare. And so it's really neat to get us all on the same page there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time today trying to convince you guys that you need to help marriages. I think most of us are there. If you agree with that, give me a little thumbs up. We're already there. We just want to get more practical on it. But one of the things I have to do as the leader of this thing, but also as a pastor, I have to pause and go, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we focusing in on marriage? And I think for a couple of reasons. One, the bottom line, I think, is that healthier marriages equal healthier churches. I think we can all get on the same page with that, because if you think about it, when marriages are healthier, volunteerism is healthier. More people are volunteering, but your volunteers themselves are much more healthy. When their marriages are better, again, everything's better, including the level and the quality of these volunteers. The other thing, a really practical thing, is when marriages are better, our attendance is better. I mean, you think about this for a second. When a family breaks apart, typically the couple does not continue to go to the same church, and neither do their kids, or their kids are going back and forth. I talked to a youth pastor the other day who said, if so many of our kids' parents weren't divorced, we wouldn't have enough space to do a junior high ministry, which broke my heart. But it speaks to this whole thing of kids are going back and forth from our church. And we all know that healthier churches have kids that come consistently. The other is tithing. I mean, let's be honest, tithing is an important part of how we do what we do. People bless us so we can bless others. And divorce is very expensive. And so from a very practical standpoint, it's not great for tithing. I think most importantly, though, is our faith, is that healthier marriages equal healthier faiths. I don't know about you, but when my wife and I are not doing great, then my faith is off. And so I think that's true for most of us. And so it's so important for our faith. So I think a lot of people are learning, and that we all know how important it is that marriage ministry is important for the healthiness of our church. But I think a lot of us have realized over the last, I think especially 5 to 10 years, is that we knew that we were going to have to pivot how that we were doing marriage ministry. The Ullman Family Foundation came out with a study about 10 years ago, and they were trying to find out people's perception of marriage ministry. And here's what they found. The results came back and said that people see marriage ministry as boring, preachy, outdated, and feminine. So in other words, marriage ministry had, and for some of us still does have, an image problem. And the problem is when there's an image problem, there's an effectiveness problem. And so I've watched churches over the last, especially 5 to 7 years. I don't know how much was based off of that study, because we've been talking about this study forever, or it was based off just being a great leader that says we have to do marriage ministry differently. That if we're going to be effective, we've got to pivot. We've got to change this thing. And so I've watched these shifts that churches have made. A lot of you that are watching this, you're watching this and you've made these shifts as well. And that's why I love this community, because you guys, because you have made these shifts, when people ask questions, you answer in a way that said, you know what, we're doing marriage ministry differently than we've ever done it before. And again, I don't think any of us feel like we're there, that we've got it all figured out yet. But the thing I love is I feel like that there's been a whole different sense and feel of marriage ministry, and it's not only its level of importance, but how we're going to do it. So what I want to do is I want to dive into what I've seen. It's like 7 shifts that are currently happening in the marriage ministry that I think have made marriage ministry so much more effective. So we're going to dive into those, and what we're going to do is we are going to leave a time at the end to ask and answer any questions, and I'll be glad to answer some of those questions. And I know that I want some of you to jump in there and answer some of the people's questions. A lot of times you guys can do that way better than I can. We're figuring out this whole live webinar thing, so lots of grace as we figured this thing out technically. But again, we're so glad that you're here, and we're going to dive in. I think one thing that we have to think about a little bit before we dive in is this, and I'm changing my notes right here. Thank you very much. Is what are the approaches to marriage ministry that fall short? Like, what are those that we have seen? Maybe some of us have actually been a part of these approaches that haven't been as effective, that I just said have fallen short. And you should know what I'm about to talk to you about. We're going to post these notes up, so you can take notes if you'd like. That's fantastic, but I don't want you to panic. If you miss it now, you're going to miss it forever. So we're going to post these notes. The first approach that falls short is this hands-off approach. I think there's a lot of churches, for different reasons, just say, hey, we don't have the budget. Sunday's coming. We don't have the time. We don't have the resources. I mean, when I asked, would you rather have more money and more volunteers? Every one of them said volunteers. And so you're like, that's what we need help with. So most churches say, a lot of churches that don't approach marriage ministry will do so because they don't have the time, don't have the budget. Or they'll say this, hey, if we can just get people into God's word on Sunday morning during worship, and we can put people in community, then you know what? Everything's going to be okay. I wish that were the case. I really, really do. I wish there was no need for us to have this webinar. I wish there was no need for marriage ministry. Unfortunately, we know that that's not the case. So this whole idea that we can just be hands off, it just falls short. The other is the topical approach. I think a lot of times, church leaders, they've heard all the sad stories. They can fill in the blank of, I can't believe blank and blank got a divorce. Give me a thumbs up if you've got that couple, couples like that in your church, with some key leaders that, I can't believe blank and blank got a divorce and we're blown away. We can't believe they didn't tell us. We can't believe, that that's happened. And so we know that that's the case. And so I think a lot of us will say this. We will say, we are not going to focus in on marriage ministry because of that. I know that we can't. We know that cannot be the case. The third reason here, is the reactionary approach. I think, and this is so many thumbs ups, and these are not happy thumbs ups, are they, guys? Like to say, I can't believe this couple, but we're going to talk about some things, right? We're going to talk about some things. We're going to have less of these stories. I can promise you. So the reactionary approach. This is an approach where we just say, you know what, we're going to reach out to couples when couples reach out to us. We're going to address couples when couples address us. When they call the church, then we'll speak with them. Here's what I've known after being in ministry for a really long time. It hit me one day. A lot of time when couples are looking, when they come to the church, I don't believe they're looking for reconciliation. I think they're looking for justification. They want to be able to say, especially if they have kids, we've tried everything. We even tried talking to the bald guy at church and we couldn't make it work. Even their parents want to be able to say it. They really did try. They talked to somebody at church and they couldn't make it work. So I feel like we can't be reactionary. We have to reach out to couples while they'll still take our hand. And for those of us who have couples in our office a lot, we know that a lot of times if we can just reach out right before one of them or both of them have given up, a lot of times they're ready. They still got some fight in them, but we cannot not wait. We cannot wait until they reach out to the church. So what are these shifts? What are these changes that we've seen that's not hands off? That's, it's not topical. It's not a topic to be covered. It's a relationship to be discipled. It's not this reactionary approach. What are these new things? The first thing is these paradigm shifts that I've seen is moving from intervention to intervention and prevention. Moving from intervention to intervention and prevention. That's shift number one, is we've really got to be not only intentional about how when couples reach out to us, what our plan is, and we got to have a plan for that, right? We can't have our pastors stopping everything or church leaders stopping everything to meet with a couple, which I think, is there any better use of their time? No, but at the same time, wouldn't it be better if we had a system in place where these couples who are in crisis could get attention, they could get the help they needed without disrupting every other level of the church? I know one of the most attractive things, if you're trying to talk to your senior pastor about having marriage ministry at your church, is to say, we want to keep people out of your office because he would like that. She would like that as well. So moving from intervention to intervention and prevention. What if we got ahead of the game? I mean, wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't it be superior if we got ahead of the game to keep couples from getting into crisis in the first place? Okay, one thing I didn't think about before this webinar was all these little emojis coming up. And here's the problem. I was ADHD long before it was cool. So if you see me squirrel around, but don't quit doing it. It's just something I need to acknowledge. Anyway, how do we move to prevention? Is how do we reach out to them? And here's the reason that I think that we don't do that. And I totally ripped out what I'm about to say from Andy Stanley. Is intervention is emotional and the results are measurable. When we help a couple that was going to get a divorce and they stay together, that's emotional, right? That's a great story. And we want to have those stories. It's measurable. They were going to get a divorce. Now they're not going to get a divorce. Those are emotional and measurable. And that's great. But here's the thing. Prevention is neither emotional nor measurable, but it's far superior. We can't measure it. We don't know what we prevented. The couples in our church don't know what we prevented. And couples aren't couples aren't calling the church with good news either, are they? They don't call the church and say, oh, pastor, I was living like roommates. Now, we're living like lovers. So they're not calling with good news. And again, we don't know. They don't know what we've prevented. We don't know about the family that stayed together, the kids that didn't have to go back and forth to two different homes, all through middle school and high school. We don't know that, but it's a far superior story. Let's use youth ministry, for example. If a youth ministry reaches a kid that comes in their youth ministry that's struggling with drugs and they get him the help that he needs and he gets off drugs, that is an intervention story, and that's emotional and that's measurable. And we love those stories. But in the far superior story is that there would have been something in place to help that kid from getting into drugs in the first place. That's a far superior story. But again, it's not emotional, and it's not measurable. So I say this, we're going to have to wait till heaven to hear these stories. But I don't know if you're like me, I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait to hear those stories. So that's shift number one, moving from an intervention approach to intervention and prevention. Number two is moving from children's ministry to family ministry. It's so easy in our ministries to get in our silos. We got our children's ministry. We got preschool, we got children's, we got youth, we got marriage, we got small groups. So we can really live these things out in silos. And a lot of you that are watching this and a lot of church leaders, especially when we talk to orange churches, we're all very, very passionate about our area, right? And so children, we want to be the best at what we do. And youth want to be the best at what we do. But what we found is if we can get in the room, all of us together, and we can say, how are we reaching families as a whole. We don't want to compete with each other. We don't want to be competing audiences. We don't want to be competing ministries. We want to have a collective approach. And the other part of this moving from children's to family is just to know, and we say this a lot around Orange, is one of the best things that you can do for a kid is help mom and dad's marriage. Or that could be mom and stepdads. That could be stepdad and mom. That could be foster parents. That could be grandparents. That could be key leaders in your ministry or small group leaders in your ministry that are working with your kids, because that may be the only positive marriage that they see either. So when we back up, I've seen churches, when they start to get this, I'm seeing this movement that's truly happened over the last 5 to 10 years where churches are getting this and they're moving into this space from children's ministry to family ministry. And what has happened is, I don't think a children's pastor thinks automatically, I need to pour into marriages. When we call it, this is why, words are so important. When we call it family ministry, right? All of a sudden that pastor goes, whoa, that includes marriage. So it's a huge thing. It's been a huge difference. We're trying to figure that out at Orange. How do we partner marriage and parenting better? We know a lot of you are doing that well. So that's an important thing. It's moving from children's ministry to family ministry. The third one is moving from isolation to relationship. How do we move couples from living isolated lives to relational lives? How do we do that? Because so many couples are living isolated. I know that can be the case here. We live in the suburbs of Atlanta, and a lot of people are living really isolated lives where they hit the garage door at night, they go inside, the door drops down, and truly, we love our neighbors and we have a relationship with them, but if they didn't hear from us from, a few weeks, they're not going to think about it. We're living isolated. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. One, because we're really, really busy. People have got a million things going on, and that's true in all situations. We're really, really busy, but we're the first generation that's really been so mobile, that's moved away from our village. Dr. Sue Johnson puts it this way. She says, the problem with a lot of marriages is couples are trying to get from each other what they used to get emotionally from a village. That they, used to, guy had a tough day at work. He's walking in, grandpa's sitting on the front porch. Grandpa goes, hey, how was your day? It was awful. He tells grandpa about it, walks inside. He sees his wife, and wife goes, hey, how was your day? Great. And so we're trying to get too much from each other. And so as a church, how do we pull people out of that busyness, isolation? How do we become their village, right? How do we, the church, become the people that are surrounded by people that are for their marriage? We're going to talk about practically how to do that in just a second, but we've got to move people into relationship so we don't get those surprises that say, I can't believe so-and-so and so-and-so got a divorce, because they had people around them that saw the signs coming, that saw the warning signs, that spoke into them, that loves them. We're in a small group right now, and we've divided into men and women for a while because some of there's a couple of ladies that were having a really hard time sharing in front of the guys, and we've had these incredible experiences. And so my wife and I kind of come in, don't tell anybody this, but we kind of talk, and she tells me what's going on with the wife and that's struggling and the husband that's struggling. And it's so great for us to be able to pour into them. And my buddy, they've been working really hard as a couple. And he says to me on Monday, because we meet on Monday mornings, he said, I just feel like this is a reset for me every Monday to want to be a better husband. And that is moving somebody out of isolation into relationship. So that's number 3, moving from isolation to relationship. Number 4, we need to move from information to experience. How do we move couples from information to experience? Because that's the thing. There's been a lot of great marriage information for decades now. Really great stuff. Fantastic information. The problem is, studies show that couples on average are spending 4 minutes a day in meaningful conversation. 4 minutes. And so if our answer is a ton of information that's not been filtered even, it's too much, and they don't know how to absorb it. How do we move them from that information to experience? I remember when we first started marriage ministry, back in 2001, I'm getting old. I'd just been married like 6 years at the time. And so I remember starting this whole thing. We're going to start with events. And I remember walking into a bookstore to kind of get a feel of what was out there to help couples. And I remember being so discouraged for the guy or the lady that walks into a bookstore and says, I want to help my marriage, and the only place I know to go is a bookstore, which our now equivalent is what? Google's. Did I say Google's? I'm like my dad right now. The Google's, the Walmart. But I think about the person that walks into a bookstore or the Googles and says, I want help for my marriage, and they're overwhelmed. And so what if we move people as the church? What if we move them from information to experience? One of the things we want couples to experience is a really great dates. How do we help them do that? And that's one of the things that has been so much fun, helping churches to help couples dates. We started this thing in our church called the Great Date Experiment because we didn't know if it was going to work. So if it didn't go well, we could say to our bosses, hey, well, let's experiment. And we didn't have any money to do it. We had not budgeted for it. And so we just basically took an envelope and put 5 cards. We put 5 cards in it, and it had step 1, step 10, step 3, and says, don't answer don't go to the next step till you finish this one. I think it was like 5 or 6 cards. But the first one said, when you get to the traffic light, make out until the person behind you honks the horn. So we'd just be handing these envelopes. People are driving through. We're handing them envelope through their window. And about 2 minutes in, I hear through the woods and through the trees, and I'm like, that is the sound of Jesus, right? It's when we're getting there, they're laughing. We got people making out, and we get to the church to get to do that. So when we say to them, we can talk about, give them all this information on the power of affection, or we can let them make out at our events, or we can encourage these kind of fun things. So how do we move from information to experience? It's a lot of fun. Number 5 is moving people from feminine to feminine and masculine. This, if you've been around married people a while, go ahead and send a thumbs up if you've heard us talk about the importance of being guy friendly when it comes to this thing. And let me tell you what I mean about that, and then I'll tell you what I don't mean about that. What we've found is that guys, there's Heather. Yeah, Heather has done a great job of doing this, of reaching guys. Heather, I want you to chime in at the end of this thing. We're taking questions, but Heather has done such an amazing job of reaching her area here. Heather has described her area as impoverished, and so they have to be really strategic about how they reach guys, but they have done such a phenomenal thing creating these events. We had one church, Laura Gray. I don't know if you've jumped on here yet, but Laura works in Gray, Georgia, at Gray First Baptist Church, and they created an event where the way they got people to the event is they put a barbecue grill in the lobby, and it had this big sign on it. People would walk in each Sunday, and it says, one lucky guy is going to win this barbecue grill at our Married Life event. I'm sorry, Married People. Married Life's a bad word. Married People, just kidding. And so all of a sudden you show up to the event, and then there's a football helmet on every table. They're doing, what do you call it? Food? What do you call it? Food? Not backyard food, tailgate food. Yeah, they had tailgate all over the place. Sorry, Robert, you're a sports guy. You got to help me out with this thing a little bit more. Anyway, say hi, Robert. Can you spin around here? Let's see. Here's Robert. Robert's awesome. The reason we're having this webinar is because of Robert. Let me just tell you, I'd be here by myself, and my stepmom would be with me because she loves me and would help me. So thank you, Robert. So how do we move, what am I talking about? From feminine to masculine. So to create these worlds, because a guy thinks he's coming into a marriage event. He thinks he's walking into a Valentine's Day banquet. How do we do this thing differently? So let me give you an example of an event. So a guy walks in, doesn't want to go, but he walks in, music's up, lights up. We're say play Braves game music in our area, and this is music they play at Braves game that people from 8 to 80 love. Like walks in, Braves game's music up. It's fun. He automatically walks in and goes, tables aren't feminine, they're just cool, whatever do to make that cool. That's one of the things you guys do great on Facebook Leaders pages. You'll post a lot of pictures of how to make this happen. So if I'm saying be masculine, all you gotta do is go through this page and you see a million examples of that. But he walks in, even the desserts are manly. Brownies, pie. What else is, Robert, what else is manly desserts? Mashed potatoes. Good call. Whatever it is, it's manly food. But we have that. And then you have somebody come out, maybe you show a fun video. Somebody walks out and says, hey, welcome to the first Married People Night Out. Hey, some of you guys are here and you didn't want to come here. Well, let me just tell you, here's what's not going to happen. We're not going to embarrass you. We're not going to make you share your issues with people around the table that you do or don't know. We're not going to embarrass you. We may embarrass ourselves, but not you. We're going to have some more videos. We're going to allow you to play a game around the table. We're going to have a couple come up front, a couple of couples and compete. They've already been picked, so don't stress that it's going to be you. Have a good time. And then we're going to have a message that focuses on one thing, just one thing that's going to be great for all of our marriages. And they sit back, they relax, shoulders go down, and it's an incredible night. And I think this honors women especially because they feel like, hey, you know what? You made this safe for my husband. You know, I drug him here and you didn't beat him up. So thank you for that. In fact, in our church, there was a lot of the ladies that worked in the church office, their husbands worked in the corporate world. And I would see them the next week after the event and they would just go, oh, thank you for making it safe. It was such a great, and I've never once had a woman say to me, you know, it wasn't feminine enough or it wasn't romantic enough. But so many times it's the thank you for making it great. And so let's figure out how to do that well. And moving from feminine to feminine and masculine, one of the things that we've really been talking a lot about married people is being guy friendly, but yet not being so stereotypically that way, not to do so many stereotypes, especially never communicating that, you know, the 1950s mentality of, you know, the little wife is waiting for the husband to come home, or, you know, we want to make sure we're not doing that. At the same time, we also want to make sure that that women feel equally heard from. A lot of times the marriage ministry space, we hear a lot from men. So we're trying to be really cautious about that. And we're trying to be great about that and being balanced. But your guys, make no mistake about it, are your toughest customers. So that is number 5, moving from feminine to feminine and masculine. Number 6 is moving from general to focus. Again, we've got content mountain with people. And my dear friend and boss, Reggie Joyner, says it this way. He said to me when we started Married People in 2010, he goes, Ted, the most successful people are not going to be the ones that create content, but the ones who filter it well. He said, there's already a great content out there. He said, our job is to filter it well. And granted, we create a lot of content. At the same time, it's based on research. It's based on a lot of work from other people. And so how do we move people from this general mountain of material, of content, to something more focused? If you've been around married people for a while, you've heard something we call the core 4 habits. Now, whether you use the core 4 habits or another curriculum or another list of words, we suggest you get into a room with your people that they're pouring into this thing and say, if couples could only get a few things, what would they be? A lot of churches will use the core 4 habits because, and again, this is why we're here. We know a lot of you don't have staff, so we've done a lot of this work on our end, so you don't have to, because we know you don't have the bandwidth. But we created a thing called the core 4 habits, and this was created like when we had a dry erase board in 2010, and we go, okay, what's our content going to be? How are we going to narrow it down? And so I started watching after years of creating marriage content at North Point and for our events. North Point's our church I worked at. Was I kept hearing myself say over and over, this isn't easy to live out necessarily, but it is easy to understand. And then I started noticing there's not a lot of verses in the Bible on marriage. And also it may be the only time in the Bible where the author just punts, where Paul says marriage is a mystery. Like, don't even try to figure it out. So if he calls it a mystery and then he gives us a few verses. So what we did is we took those few verses, we took a few of them and created what we call the core 4 habits. I'll zoom through them really quickly. You can see more information about this on the website, but it's have serious fun from Proverbs 5. Solomon he should have taken his own advice, by the way, but he's warning his son about adultery. Like, you need to stay away from it. And for 18 verses, he's trying to scare the pants on his son. And so it's like, you think about, adultery is one of the big bad bears of marriages that kills marriages. And so he's warning him about that. And so what's the do? It's such a parent. It's just don't. But then he stops at 18. He goes, be captivated, be intoxicated by the wife of your youth. May you rejoice in her always. May her satisfy you always. I mean, it's just, if you don't read the Bible, you really should. It's got some good, juicy stuff. Anyway, but it's this idea that the best way to protect your marriage is to enjoy marriage. And in the Christian field especially, we don't start there. We start with marriage takes a lot of hard work, which is no one ever got married for that reason, right? They got together because they enjoyed each other. And so we get to lead out with that. And we tell them that having fun together is serious. It's serious fun. And it's not extra, but it's essential. And the great news with that is we have to convince them that that's true. But once we do, they like us. So that's moving from number 6, that's moving from general to focus, that we start honing in what it is we want you to hear, what it is we want you to do. Does that make sense? So that we don't overwhelm them with content. And we talk about, based on that, is we want to give couples less content more often. That was another thing we totally noticed in the marriage ministry space, is a lot of people would do retreats and they give people, I don't know, like 5 years worth of content in 2 days. And people are walking away going, what was all that about? We thought, what would happen if we give couples less content more often? Couples, again, 4 minutes a day, and our answer is a ton of content, we're going to miss them. But what if we help them to have relational wins? What if we help them to focus on each other for just a few minutes? What if we help them to laugh and to affirm? Wouldn't that be incredible? We have one resource called the Married People Monthly, and one of the things called Random Awesomeness, and it's just our excuse for surfing the web. So we'll find a silly video, and the goal of that is for people that are living like roommates. You got one, says, "Hey, come look at this. It's funny." That's a win for us. That puts joy in the day. That makes something fun. So how do we give them less content more often? How do we move from this general sense and all this amount of content to something that's very, very focused? And number 7, this is our last one, is moving from programs to process. How do we move from programs to process? Because here's what I believe. Marriage is not a program. It's not an event. It's a process. It's not a relation. It's not a topic to be covered. It's a relationship that needs to be discipled. So how do we partner in the process with them? What does that look like? How do we do that? Where couples feel like that we're giving them less content more often in different layers. So I want to talk a little bit what that process looks like. Now, I'm not saying you have to have our strategy for marriage ministry. You don't have to have the Married People strategy, but I do want to encourage you to be strategic, that you sit down and whatever you're doing, you're going, we're doing this for a strategic reason. It's just not worth all the effort and time if we're not going to know why we're doing what we're doing or how we're doing what we're doing. Like I keep calling it a podcast. By the way, we have a podcast now, and I keep calling it, this is a webinar. But I think about, we had to be strategic about when to have it. And I give all the credit to Robert on this, but I think I don't mind us spending the time and effort to do this because we know the why and we know the how. And Robert did a lot of research on when's the best time to do this. I know that wasn't true for all of you. Obviously, for the ones that are listening, he was exactly right. But it was the thing, I don't mind doing anything as long as I know we've done the homework and we're being strategic. And the same is true for any marriage ministry. So I just want to encourage you, what is your strategy? Our strategy has 3 layers to it. Again, we're going to give you the notes for this. Number 1 is we want to help individual couples. How do we help couples when we're not with them, which is 99.9% of the time? How do we help couples? We do that in a couple ways. We want to help couples to date. It's what brought them together, and a lot of times it's what can keep them together or restart this connection with each other. When we say, we want you to have serious fun. So we create 4 dates in a PDF format that help couples to date, to help couples to laugh and to affirm each other. Some people say, oh, they don't seem very spiritual. I say neither is divorce. But we create, that's why I get in trouble. We create 4 PDFs, and a lot of churches will take these. A lot of you do a great job. So after this, I want some of you can look on our Married People Leaders page, and you can see how some of you are killing it. Archie Rich, I don't know if you're listening to this, but Archie is the king, and you can see a lot of his posts of making these date nights great. So they'll take the PDF, they'll put it in a gift bag, and then people will show up at the church, they'll provide childcare, and they'll drive away with their gift bag, and they'll have a date night. And it's changing marriages. It's changing. All of a sudden, we're leading out with fun, we're leading out with connection, and we always encourage them to post things online, and all of a sudden, we say stories beget stories. Stories, people have got FOMO. Let's leverage the FOMO that they missed out on date night. And so to create these times for couples to connect, to laugh, to affirm, we want to do that through date nights. The second way we do that is through a thing called Married People Monthly. This was a resource that we created that any church could do. They just needed to find a teenager that knew a little bit about technology, not a ton, but a little bit, where we send you a monthly email and then you send it out. You can manipulate it or you can leave it exactly like you are, but it's got little bite-sized wins to help people to connect. One of them, the categories, it's got, I think, like 7 categories. One of them is Post-it. And here's how you use a Post-it note to love your spouse, to affirm your spouse, to let them know you're thinking about them. And that kind of thing seems silly, but if you think about, you don't love your job and you get in your car and there's a Post-it note that says, thank you for going to work. I know you hate your job, but thank you for providing for our family. That matters. Or on the washing machine, thank you for doing 5,000 loads of clothes and never doing the same thing over and over with not a lot of thanks. So thank you. I noticed. And so if we can help them do this through this little email, through this newsletter, it really works. We know a lot of churches are getting that into hands a different way. Josh Fortney, I know, does a great job. He's in Texas. He actually has learned if he breaks it up into different pieces and he gives it to his group leaders and they send it out, he's got a lot more click rate. So all of you that are listening that use Married People Monthly in just a little bit, I want you to chime in on some of this good stuff. So that's individual couples, which is date night, Married People Monthly. The third part is small groups. Let me see a thumbs up if you do small groups or you have home groups. I'm sorry, small groups or Sunday school or home groups. Like you do some kind of groups at your church. All right, I know there's a little delay, but I need to see some thumbs. Let me know. Small groups. Come on, there you go. All right, so most of us are doing small groups in some format, whether that's Sunday morning, again, whether that's during the week at home groups. But for us, we don't want you to create a new context for small groups. We want to provide, you provide the context, we provide the content. So each year we'll create a study that's a 5 to 6 week study that you put in your existing system. People say, well, why don't, what do we do the rest of the time? We're in a small group. I say, whatever you were doing before you knew us. So we want to provide the content, not necessarily, we don't want to change the context. Some churches will say, we don't have Sunday school and we don't have small groups. What we'll say with that is, have a short-term group. Say, hey, we're going to meet Sunday afternoons for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, Wednesday night, whatever works best. We're going to meet then for a few weeks. And all of a sudden they start getting a taste of small groups. But again, this goes back to this whole idea of moving people from isolation to relationship. This is where we do this. Our church says, that circles are better than rows. I say that, what happens in rows is actually what gets people in circles, but that's a whole different talk. But this getting people into circles to have people for their marriage, this happens in small group. You get community and accountability and it's faith building. It's so important. And finally, we have larger group experiences. Let me tell you a little bit what I mean by that, because I know that's not a phrase a lot of people use. Most churches aren't saying, hey, what are we doing for our larger group experiences? So we're still figuring out the verbiage on that. But what we mean by that is I like retreats. I like marriage retreats as long as they're part of a strategy. But for so long, our church, we just did retreats. That kind of was our strategy. Our strategy by default is we would do this retreat. And we started watching that we were hitting the same people, the same people that come to anything year after year. We thought, gosh, I wish it would create something different. I wish we would, could create something that people could bring their friends to. And so what we decided to do is, again, another experiment and said, what if we spent that same amount of time and money and we did 4 one-night events once a season throughout the year? What happened? We created these one-night events. It quadrupled our attendance and it became one of the greatest outreaches into our church. So when you create these environments that are everything we've talked about, from guy-friendly to less information, more experience, all of a sudden it's huge. And it's huge for outreach because, when your marriage is better, everything's better. And so a lot of people have told me it's easier to invite somebody to a marriage thing on Saturday night than Sunday morning church. Because, if your marriage is not working, nothing's working. So all of a sudden these people were coming and it was trumping all their hesitancies about church because they wanted their marriage to be better. So in this final note on this is with millennials, their number one priority, Pew Research just came out of that, their number one priority is to be a good parent, and number 2 is to have a great marriage. Faith was not till number 5. And we can, as Christians, go, well, people need to get their priorities straight. Or we can say, wow, this is a great opportunity. Because think about this. If family matters to millennials, then our churches can matter for a lot of us, once again, to millennials. So it's a great way to reach millennials with these one-night events and to have it. And those one-night events are also a great place to cast vision for the rest of the things you're doing for marriage. You cast a vision and say, hey, it's just not a one-night thing. We want to be with your marriage all the time, and here's how we're going to do that. So we're getting to closing out from my yapping. I'm going to give you a couple of practical options to kind of, before we take questions, I'm going to give you a couple of practical options of what you can do with what you just heard. First of all, I want you to hear this before I give you the practical options, is married people exist to help you help churches. That's why we do what we do. Got a great guy named Matt Ivy, and he just talks to churches all the time, just like you, and kind of helps them get going. A lot of our leaders, we're really working, trying to find some key leaders that would be willing to do the same thing. But we want to help you. That is the goal of why we do what we do. We want to help you. So One of the ways we do that is wrote a book called Married People, How Your Church Can Build Marriages That Last. It goes in what we just talked about, Way Slow. I wrote that with Doug Fields, kind of help people to do that. Oh, look at that. Robert's so much smarter than me. Look at this. There it is. All right. So there's that. Or you can contact us on this webpage. You can just on this Facebook page. That's the best way to contact us. We've got an email, but you guys are in the family. And then the other thing to do is continue to do what you've done today, and that is connect on this page, but also connect with these other leaders. So kind of hang out on this page, teach us. I mean, we're always asking surveys on this thing. We're always telling you about new resources. But basically for us, one of the greatest benefit is, one, I've gone on this page on days I want to quit because I see how great you guys are doing. Just being completely transparent with you there. But for you guys to go on there and teach each other and learn from each other, I mean, it truly is one of the biggest blessings of getting to do what we do. And then finally, everything that I just described, we create a strategy pack for that each year. We've changed the name now to Annual Partnership because we want to be more than resources. We want to be training. We want to get better than that. And we want to get better at community, which is one of these big steps that we made today, is to be better at community. But it gives you the resources to do the strategy that I just talked about. Now, you don't have to implement everything at once. You don't have to implement 4 events all at once, but it gives you the resources to do that. I'm sure a lot of you that are listening that already use the strategy pack, you can speak to why you love it or what we need to change. I mean, we ask that all the time, and you guys are honest. Yes, you are. And we appreciate that. But you've changed what we've created. Like, for instance, for small group, you said, we don't want to teach in script. We want a video that we push play and people can interact with that. So you've taught us a lot on that. So we've got this strategy pack on there. And I think before we get questions, oh, yeah. All right. So here's the deal that I was going to let you guys know about. We're having I hate sounding like a salesman, but at the same time, I want you to get this into your hands. Here, write this down, and it'll be on the notes, right, Robert? But it's for this crew. It's called Cyber Monday 17. This is the coupon code, Cyber Monday 17. And when can they start using that?
On the 27th.
27th.
November 27th.
November 27th. So this is Cyber Monday 17, and it's 40% off the strategy pack. So that's a big old deal. I mean, that's a good deal, and we kind of got the higher ups kind of give us the thumbs up that we could do this because we just want to make this easy for you. So that's Cyber Monday 17. All right. Now here's the fun part. I can shut up and you guys can post questions. We're going to see how this is going to work. Go ahead and post questions. Oh, I like this. Anne-Marie says, I haven't read the book, but I've been using the strategy pack for 2 years. Time to get the book. Better late than never. I like that, Anne-Marie. That's funny. Let's see what I read the book. Yes, the book's very, very helpful. That's good because writing books is not fun, especially for squirrel brain. I think we could start with a small group. I like that. You definitely could start with a small group. What do you got? What have you got, already there? And you just add the content to the small group. That's a great starter. The other thing too is that Married People Monthly. That's really easy, and that's something that can happen frequently. Let's have not read the book.
We've got another question.
Okay. Yeah.
Dig into that one while other people post it. So,
right.
What are some practical steps to communicate the need and next steps for accountability in marriage?
What are the practical steps to communicate the need to who?
I don't know. It's Brian Levine.
Brian Levine, are you on here? To communicate the need.
And next steps for accountability in marriage.
Okay. So how do we communicate the need? This is something that I know that a lot of you, here's what we've heard from you. You get it. You're passionate about it. You're thinking about marriage ministry, on a Wednesday at 2:00 because you're passionate about it. And a lot of times you have a hard time convincing, your senior pastor to do that. We've created some different videos, different training videos you can find on our webpage. They're totally free. It's like one of them is called Leader to Leader because I have a lot of people go, gosh, if you could just sit down with my senior pastor. So we created a video, again, called Leader to Leader that kind of helps you cast vision because what you don't want to do is go in there. Here's one more big thing you need to be responsible for. This is like, hey, pastor, got it figured out. I've got the volunteers. I just need you to cheerlead it. So that, and as far as accountability, how do we have accountability in marriage? And I'm assuming teaching our couples have accountability with each other. I think that happens in small groups primarily. I know a lot of people have great mentor programs and things, but I think at the end of the day, that accountability is a good peer-to-peer. It's walk with a wise, you will grow wise. Iron sharpens iron. And so I think that's one of those things that small group, we got to talk about that. And we've got to talk about being transparent, that this is not a supper club. This is about us being real with each other and caring a lot about each other. So there's that.
Got another question.
We got some on here too. Which one do I answer first?
Wait, if you want to answer that one, go.
Okay, I've got, hey, Alex, you said going to be talking with our new campus pastor about married people. What's a good way to do this? Yeah, I would do that leader to leader video that you could post. And so I think you'll just go to, where do they find those, Robert, the leader to leader video?
It's on YouTube right now.
It's on YouTube. So you know what we'll do? We'll post a link to it on here. We'll post a link on that. All right, so I'm going, let's see. The title of the book is Married People, How Your Church Can Build Marriages That Last. That's a yes. So
I can feed them to you if you want.
All right.
How do you implement strategies as the youth and children's pastors?
How do you implement strategy as a youth and children's pastors? One of the things that I would say, because a lot of people, one of my favorite leaders actually is a children's pastor here in Georgia, and she's not married even. And she says, I love my babies. And she said, I know that one of the best things I can do is to help mom and dad's marriage. And so she creates events. And so I would say, so she went ahead and did that. Church gave her permission to do that. The other thing you can do is go, okay, who's under my authority? Well, your small group leaders or whoever your volunteers are, you find out the ones that are married and you give them these date nights, or you get their address and you send them Married People Monthly, or you send them some kind of email that you've created. You start talking up marriage ministry. And I think we do a lot of the proactive stuff. You can send them on date nights. Like if you're a children's pastor, how great would it be to say to your children's leaders, hey, you know what? We want to, you serve everybody else. We want to do a little childcare for you. So there's ways to do that. So I would say start with the ones that you oversee. And also when you do a great job, then it kind of leaks out to the rest of the church. And hey, I heard you guys had a great time. And that way it can spread to other ones. I think it's easier if I can just grab them off here.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Is there content ideas for the one-night events? Yes. Lisa, in our strategy pack, we give you everything you need to create those events, because that was one of the biggest things that I would get asked when I was at my church was, these were very fun nights. What do you have? And so it gives you all the resources to promote all the social media. It's all designed. There's promotional videos, there's tiles. And then the night of, you get a host script, you get a program order, you get videos to show. If you don't have anybody to speak, you can push play. We have communicators from across the country. You can push play on that. And if you go, no, we want to give it live, Lisa, all you guys, there's a transcription of that message. There's also an outline. So it's everything that I'd kind of dreamed to be able to give churches to do these one-night events. So we do all the kind of the legwork on the front of it. And if you use 10% of it, great. If you use 90% of it, great. But it's all designed to help you do that. And then I have, how do I keep small groups sustainable if some couples drop out? How do you replenish the group with new couples without repeating the content? All right. How do you keep the small group sustainable if some couples drop out? I think it's part of this is one is excellence. So you want to start with it being excellent, that they want to come back. One of the ways that we keep dropout from happening is we don't do homework with our small groups, because people won't come if they didn't do their homework. Or if you had them reading 3 chapters in a book, they're going to, we're not going to come. So we remove the guilt. So we're thinking if people are giving you 2 hours a week for small group, or an hour and a half, that's a lot of time. So just make that time great. So I think when the experience is great, your dropout rate, your retention rate is way better. Also, it's a size thing. So I wouldn't start with a group of 4. Sometimes I would start with large groups of 5, 6 groups of small groups. So if one does drop out and one's not there, that seemed to be a good number for us. If we got past 6, 5 to 6 has been a key number for us. It says, how do you replenish the group with new couples without repeating the content? I would have like a start date and a finish date. Like, how do you not just start over? I would say for this season, we're going to do this. And if they miss out, then they'll have to do it next round, or you can give them the content a different way. But I wouldn't repeat for those ones that are hanging out with you. I wouldn't make them go back through that. But I think, one of the things I think we can learn with small groups is, everything else that we sign up for our kids and for us has a start date and a finish date. And people kind of get the repercussions of staying on that schedule or not. So I think when they have a really firm date, they can start. The other thing I would say is make sure the time you're doing it is ideal. Do a little, research and say, when's the best time for us to do this or have it? Let's see. Let's see what we got. Eric says, where can you find the success stories of strong marriage ministries on the benefits to other parts of the church? Where can you find the success stories of strong marriage ministry on the benefits of other parts of the church? I need to send you stuff. There's a guy named Matt Engel who I feel like is one of the greatest things that's happening to the marriage ministry space. And they're done a ton of research, and they're doing a ton of research on what happens. One thing he's doing is even for these one-night events, they will take a poll of rank your marriage from 1 to 5, and then they'll do the same poll afterwards. And what they're finding is even after a 2-hour event, people are ranking it on average 1 to 2 points higher. So that's a lot of hope in a 2-hour period. And so there's parts of that. We need to get you, Eric, I need to get you something more on that. So if you will message me again on that, I'll see if I can find something from Matt to get that. And you know what, we'll just post it for all of you guys. That'd be good. Any thoughts in attracting millennials? One of the things, living here in Atlanta, this is where Coca-Cola, the headquarters for Coca-Cola is. And I actually ran into the VP of marketing at Coke at a baby shower. So this was kind of God's reward for me for having to go to a baby shower. But I started talking to him, and he said, Ted, what you're going to start seeing with Coca-Cola images in Atlanta is they're going to be way more grainy. They're going to be way more authentic. And what they're finding with millennials is authenticity. That's what they want more than anything is, are you being real with me? So I don't know if those of you are using the Clear Strategy Pack. If you are, you can thumbs up us. But we got a millennial owned and operated company to create our latest promotional video. And they told me, they said, we're going to have scenes of all these different couples, and we're not going to use any professional lighting, which as a budget person made me very happy because I know that's expensive. But what we did, we thought because I asked the guy from Coke, I said, okay, so if you're only trying to appeal to millennials, what about Gen Xers and boomers? And he goes, oh, they're too tired to care that much. They will follow suit. So for us, one of the things we're really wanting to do well is we hit millennials. And then again, the rest of us are going to be okay because we all like authentic, right? But with millennials, if it doesn't feel authentic, if it doesn't feel real, they're out. So I would say telling them what's going on. I think it's also these one-night events are very millennial friendly. The millennials are very experiential. So they love the date nights. They love these kind of things, is allowing them to experience. So that would be the biggest thing I would say. It's just being real and experiential. All right. Keith says, have to be willing to be patient. Can take a while to get the buy-in necessary from leadership to get behind a marriage care ministry. Keith, well said. And it does take time. And it can be, the thing I love about these kind of things is that you're not alone in your passion to care, because even in Orange, like we are one little piece of the bigger pie. And so and I've always got when I was at our church, that marriage ministry can sometimes feel like the stepchild a little bit. It just is. Sunday's coming. We're kid-centric. I get it. I think for us, we do have to be patient. And the thing I love about this page, and I hope what we can do as a community of marriage ministry leaders, is to encourage each other. This is why we do what we're doing. And again, it's good, Keith, is to encourage each other to be patient. And it sometimes takes time. I tell you what, when we do things excellent, then that makes people adapt a lot quicker. And I think also too is painting the benefits to church leaders. It says on the YouTube, I like that. John Neal, that's where we found it, on the YouTube, like the Facebook and the Googles. I like that. Cool. Is the video also a part of the Married People kit? Yes, we make all those videos a part of that. Susan says, how can we get more details on the date nights you talked about? Great idea. We give a sample pack. We have a sample pack that for the strategy kit, if you're like, I don't know if I'm quite ready, to give you all that. So Susan, let us know if you would like us to send you a sample pack, or any of you listening, if you want a sample pack. And what it'll do, it'll give you a couple of pieces from large groups, a couple of pieces from individual couples, a couple of pieces from Married People Monthly, small groups, etc. So you can kind of see what you're talking about. Sandy says, what non-married couples do you include in events for date nights? For example, engaged couples or cohabitating couples. Here's what I say. I say that anybody that cares enough about marriage or passionate enough about marriage, has an interest enough about marriage to come to our event, come one, come all. In fact, we started selling tickets, individual tickets, because there'd be sometimes when we do our events where we would have, I had several guys that said, hey, I'm divorced. I want to get married again, and this time I don't want to mess it up. And so, you care if I come to your event? I was like, no, if you don't care with being primarily with married people, then come with us. And so I just would encourage that. I think it can do nothing. It could do nothing but help. All right, we've got another one that says, you can use the coupon code for the strategy pack here. Oh, that's from us. Oh, perfect. All right, here's Heather. One of the best things you can do is build a team of ambassadors whose only job is to come to an event and tell others they are coming. Pick from different circles of influence in your congregation. And Heather, that's why you're the master. So we had a panel at Orange Conference last year, and I was like, Heather, I need you to come share this wisdom. Heather has done such a great job and so knows her community. I got to tell a quick story on Heather that I love is, Heather, again, you've showed that your area it's impoverished, that it's a tough area. But one thing Heather would do, her husband actually got into photography and says, I'm going to take a picture of each couple at our event. And she said a lot of the people that go to her church they don't have a printed photo of themselves. And she goes, it's a big deal. So she'll mail that printed photo out and then tell them about the next event. And they were thrilled out of their mind. So I just think that's so great. It's knowing your audience. I feel like if I've prayed for leaders, I feel like God has whispered to me, and he doesn't whisper to me a lot, is tell them to trust themselves. You know your area, your pastor, your calendar, and you're smart. So trust yourself. My wife and I've been traveling all over the country for years, and we always say they're great people everywhere. Talent is not landing only in one spot. God's got people all over the place. All right. So we got Anne Marie says, I've been really happy with the content they provide for the date, for the night out, and the date night's well worth it. Great starting point for our lead team to customize for our culture. And that's it. We're trying to not only hit diversity in terms of race, but diversity in terms of socioeconomic. And so I think you'll notice that on the Clear video. We're really trying to hit that and be intentional about that. In fact, Orange as an organization is trying to be, diverse in every sense of the word, to represent the body in every sense of the word. What's the difference in each annual strategy packs? Susan Fisher asked that. What's the difference in each? The thing that stays the same, and the official name of our company is Rethink, which we say is not just a catchy little phrase around here, is the mission's always the same, but the methods can often change. But with each strategy pack, so each year there's a different theme. This year's theme is clear. Last year's theme was your best us. And so everything's thematically around that. So it all looks the same, feels the same. So for instance, you'd show the Clear video and you'd walk out and say, hey, that's right, you guys, show it on Sunday morning. Hey, that's right, you guys, we want to help you get clear in your marriage, because marriage has enough questions. And when you get clear in your marriage, you get connected. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have an event that's coming up, and then we're going to so you just list what you're doing. So each year, different communicators, different content in the small group. Like this year, we focused on love and money in the Clear strategy pack, because we know when people get clear on money, that's super helpful. So each year it's different. There's some things that can feel the same. Somebody told me that sitcoms work because there's a formula, and we kind of follow that with our date nights a little bit, where it's get ready, go out, do it, keep it going, and dare me. So that stays the same, but the content changes. So hopefully that answers you, Susan. How much is the pack? Right now, I think it's $4.99. If the Cyber Monday 17 is 40% off.
$2.99. It's $200 off.
Oh, it's $200 off. Mm-hmm. Oh, perfect. So it went from $4.99 to $2.99. Nice. Cyber Monday 17. So that'll help. But you just got to wait till the 27th. Yeah, 27th to purchase that. That'll save you lots of money. Says just started strategy and had great success so far. Karen, I'm so glad, since we have had one event, one date night, one successful small group, but couldn't get people excited about the money small group for some reason. Maybe it's the name. Yeah, the money thing, it can be a little bit tough. I think the reason we picked this particular study, it moved it out of just money habits, and it moved it into relational habits. That money is emotional. that, that money's not just, transaction, that we bring different pieces from our family of origin and different things. And so one of the things I would say with some of that kind of stuff is promote married people small groups. Hey, we're going to have small groups. And then when they get there, then they find out what the content is. And you go, well, that's not very fair. They go, I think that's it. Like they need a little bit more explanation. And so like one of the things, like for instance, we had a podcast with an author named Shanti Felhan, who's doing this amazing thing called the 30 Days of Kindness. And so she was so great, but we knew if we entitled it the 30-Day Kindness Challenge, that the word kindness feels weak. And so we just said, what's the one thing that can help every marriage? Then once we were into the interview, they were great, but sometimes that verbiage is tough. We got to think that through. Okay, it says, thanks, Robert has put up the link to the Leader to Leader video. Awesome. Keith, more than 6-week length usually keeps people in the group. Yeah, that's another thing too. That's a great point, Keith, is when they know a set time start date, if it's smaller, they're like, we can do this. And here's one of the things I want to say that too is a lot of people, when we're talking about being proactive, it's when you're announcing this stuff, that what your strategy, you have to say, okay, everybody that's married, I want you to raise your hand. Okay. Everybody that has your hand up, everything I'm about to talk about is for you, because they really don't have a brain pathway of working on their marriage unless something's busted. So we really have to start those brain pathways and say, this is for you. And that this helps all these paradigm shifts happen quicker. 6-week link usually keeps them. Sarah McDonald, is your content themed to the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere? Does it translate easy into the Southern Hemisphere? We're coming into summer shortly. Yeah, our stuff, I think I'm hearing you right. Are they asking weather here? Or are they asking culture here? Australia. Like, because you said we're coming into summer shortly. Like, I didn't know if that means you're going to have a lot more off time in summer. Like, sorry, Sandy. Is your content themed to seasons in the Northern Hemisphere?
I think you can mix and match and use it whenever you want.
Yeah, you can. That's the thing with us. It's we've had to create our curriculum because some people will take the large groups and they'll do a sermon series with it. So we couldn't wait, and so our seasons are not seasoned in terms of fall, spring, winter, fall. So you take it and you kind of manipulate where you want to go. If you're talking about does it speak culturally, what we have found, we just had Todd Graham. I don't know if you're with us right now, but Todd teaches about the core 4 habits in Africa. And he asked me to go with him. And I went, no. I said, I can barely translate marriage in America, much less in Africa. And he comes back and he goes, you need to have more confidence in the content, that God's word, works across the board. And he said it just works there. I remember us going to Romania and teaching and thinking, we met with their leadership, and I'd carved out like this 2-hour period for us to brainstorm what would be content, because I didn't think our content would work. And it took about 15 minutes, and they went, no, these are the same issues. So Sandy, I don't know if that's your question, but just in case if it's not. So can you all put some stuff up on Right Now Media? Okay, we did that for a little bit, but this was pre the type of videos, the kind of curriculum we have now. So we had our old stuff up there, which didn't really work. It was, here's a teaching script and here's some videos that complement it. So right now we don't. Our plan is in the next year is to put your Best Us study up on that. The Best Us study is doing really well in different venues, and so we'll probably put it up on there. But Right Now Media, they're killing it, and we're going to rejoin probably in less than a year. Okay, here is from us. Here's the coupon code, Cyber Monday 17. Thank you, Robert. It says, can you please give me a link to this survey about millennials and their priorities of parenting? Okay, I don't know if I have a link, but it's Pew Research, and you could, I'll try to find that out. We'll find it for you. We'll post it, but if you want to Google Pew Research on millennials.
I've answered most of those questions now, so if you want to start wrapping up, if you want to keep going through it.
All right, let's see.
It's getting time. So
all right, we're going to wrap up in just a minute. All right, where can we find some of the Matt Ingalls studies? We're going to get you that. We'll post up some things. Let me see. I'll go down to the bottom because maybe if you've asked. Oh, there's lots of. Oh, you've posted lots of stuff. Okay. So he's answered. Is there any question on here we haven't answered, Robert, that I need to answer?
There may be some, but I think we've gotten most of them.
Um,
We can also answer.
Yeah.
Tell them if they have questions later, they can post them within the group.
Yeah, if you guys have questions later, I always know there's processors. So as you guys continue to think and have questions, that's what this page is for. We'll get to as quickly as possible. I know this will be we're a lean team here, and so but we will get to your questions as quickly as possible. Hey, other leaders, feel free to chime in. We were just talking before this thing, like we need to give admin, capabilities to some of our leaders, because you guys can speak as well married people as we can. But there you have it. You guys I so appreciate you taking the time to do this today. We're going to wrap it up. But again, we'll keep answering your questions. We're here to help you. We love you. We believe in what you're doing. I know it feels isolating sometimes. We know sometimes you can feel like you're the only one that cares, the only one that gets it. Can I just tell you, you are not. You are surrounded by people who are very passionate about marriage. We know it. And so just know our goal. And we ask for your prayers, because, we're trying to still figure this thing out. So please keep praying for our team. Pray that God shows us, the way. Keep telling us what that is. And let's have grace and encouragement with each other. And but I'm very encouraged by today. I love how far marriage ministry has come over the last few years and all the shifts that are being made. So love you guys, and we're going offline now, but are always here to help.